Chapter 8, Adelaide 2. Stepping out of the Ghan, all the while hoping for nice hot air to warm our frozen bones, we were greeted by a cold breeze. It wasn't much warmer than on the ice box on railroad tracks. What was it with this country? I thought Australia was one big desert and always hot. My research hadn't been the best. Oh, right, I hadn't done any. None whatsoever. I like surprises too much to do any research. I was paying for that with frozen limbs now. We checked into the Bracken Inn again and even got our room back, number 6. And to our delight, we were the only ones living in it, for now. We had a hot shower to get some warmth back into our bodies and just sank into our beds to catch up on some much-needed sleep. No Ted telling us to wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. to get up, have a quick breakfast and hop on the bus. No more of that. I decided to sleep for at least 2 days, but after 15 hours nature called. The next few days were spent roaming around town. We went shopping for pretty dresses. I really didn't need dresses, so I decided that Mum should take them home in a couple of days. Backpacking with a fancy dress would have had a certain style, but I wasn't that chic or impractical. Every time we went into town, we picked up money on the way in, and every time we left town, we had none left on the way out. That wasn't good. Not for me anyway. Mum hadn't much to lose at this point, but I should have watched my money a little better. We went to a wildlife park so Mum could see the iconic animals that we had not managed to see in the wild thus far. I was hoping I still would. We stroked a sleepy koala, saw Tasmanian devils who looked more cute than dangerous, wombats, various lizards and snakes. It was really a really nice park in the hills around Adelaide called Cleland. Even though the animals were in enclosures, those were so big that it almost felt natural. Usually I am the kind of person who sees a zoo and plans break-ins to free the poor animals, but here such urges did not arise. The Bracken Inn had a new resident, Hannah. She was a lost soul like my mum, came to Australia basically to escape. Hannah was a beautiful blonde angel, but had the strong voice of a soul singer. She traveled alone with her guitar. Also, she was German. It seems that you always find your own countrymen, or women in that case. She and Mum became fast friends, bonding over their men troubles. I liked her. Mum celebrated her birthday. Her first birthday experienced in hot weather on the beach. Yes, it was finally getting hot. It was almost summer. Even though we did have some freakishly hot days in Adelaide before, it was still spring and the warmth had been fleeting, not really predictable. We went to an Italian restaurant with a view of the sea. It was beautiful to watch the wild ocean waves dance while having a wonderful meal. In the evening, we sat outside the back door of the Bracken Inn and emptied a bottle of wine or 2 with Hannah. I don't even drink wine, but after the 3rd glass it tasted a lot better. Of course, it had to be an Australian wine, a Nottage Hill Riesling, vintage 2002. I don't remember the rest of the night, but I do remember the next morning. Getting up was impossible for the 3 of us. We managed to have breakfast, but then went straight back to bed. Hannah and Mum were planning to cure themselves with more wine. I decided to stay in bed. In the afternoon, when we had all risen and felt sort of human again, we decided to visit a chocolate factory. According to the map, Hayes Chocolate Factory should be quite close to the Bracken Inn, so we started walking and walking and walking. After 2 hours of walking, we still hadn't found the chocolate factory and were dying of thirst. We went back. But I so wanted to go to this factory and imagined myself being like Charlie and Willy Wonka being my best friend, although it was more likely I'd be like Augustus. So we took a bus from the station, only to find out the factory was really only a block away, and we had managed to get utterly lost in a city with a straight square grid. Usually I recommend getting lost when you are traveling, because it is the only way to immerse and find the essence of a place, but not with chocolate cravings. By the time we arrived, the time for guided tours had passed and the tastings were finished. I was destroyed. The next morning, I put on one of my fancy dresses, went straight back and asked for work. But they must have detected the Augustus behind my pretty dress, so they thanked me for my interest and declined. No chocolate again. It was the first Sunday of Advent, which Germans celebrate by lighting a candle on their 4-candle wreath. It meant only 4 weeks until Christmas. A big band in Santa hats played Christmas songs at the mall. Uncountable fairies, elves, and Santa lookalikes scrimmaged around the pedestrian zone. To me, it had more the character of a fun fair and less to do with Christmas. I grew up with a very dignified, classy, quiet sort of Christmas in my very Catholic hometown. There had never been space for extravaganzas at religious festivities. The interpretation did not reach as far. The number of Christmas decorations throughout Adelaide in stores and private residences increased daily. The tallest Christmas tree I had ever seen thus far appeared in Victoria Square, along with a giant-sized post box for letters to Santa. I would watch numerous kids posting their wishes with care, full of hope and happiness. Of course, I felt the need to post a letter to Santa as well. Something I had never done before, because in Germany Santa does not bring the presents at Christmas. We have Saint Nikolaus, who fills your boots with sweets on December 6th. That is, if you have cleaned them nicely and put them in front of your door. But on Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day, we get our presents from Christkind. Translated, that would be Christ child. Our traditions were quite different, and so of course I had to immerse myself in this whole Santa thing. Mum decided she wanted to do a little river cruise before she left Australia. We went on board the Proud Mary and drifted along the Murray River through the most fertile lands of Australia. And along with us were all the retirees of Adelaide, it seemed. That made the whole cruise very exciting, because one did not know if there might be a chance to witness a river burial. It was entirely possible, because some of the retirees must have been retired for 50 years. I doubt they knew where they were. There was all but cobwebs in their ashen hair. All in all, this was a slow and cozy cruise, with tea and cake and talks about days gone by. The boat had a big paddle wheel, and I imagined being on the Mississippi, just waiting for Huckleberry Finn to float by. The whole trip had the air of Victorian times. All the old folks were dressed impeccably in their Sunday best. Needless to say, we stood out like sore thumbs. 2 days later, Mum left Australia to fly back home, and that was that. I sat at our regular table at the Bracken Inn, where we both used to write into our diaries in the evenings. Now it was only me. I missed her. This place reminded me too much of our joint adventure, and I decided I had to leave as soon as I can.